Okay, well, today's Nuggets at Noon, we are going to be talking about grants and funding, and we have Dr. Marsha Marshall from Marshall and Marshall Consulting. I love to say that. That helps me enunciate and pronunciate. And so, thank you so much, Dr. Marshall, for being here. And I'll let you share more about yourself and your background, and then we'll get into grants and funding for the nonprofit industry.
Awesome. Thank you. And yes, it is a tongue twister. Um, Never in a million years thought that's what my title would be as far as my last name. But yes, thank you, Lisa, for inviting me to speak about grants and funding. So today's session or nuggets will be about grants and funding, of course. Next slide, please. All right, and so I already know one Christy on myself, but I'm still going to formally introduce myself. Again, my name is Marsha Marshall. I am one half of Marshall and Marshall Nonprofit Consulting. I'm the owner and senior consultant of the business, and then my husband is also partner in the business where he basically works on finances, nonprofit, tax codes, 990s, and things of that nature, as well as anything numerical. As for my part, I specialize in grant writing. And it's kind of interesting how I came to this point. I did not go to school for grant writing. That's not what my degree is in. It's just one of those things that became a skill
Mm.
and I actually enjoyed doing it. So essentially, I started working in the nonprofit arena in 2009. I started when I was working on my master's degree, working with Susan G. Komen Foundation. And so, working through outreach and working in communities, there were organizations applying for grants. And so, this was my first introduction to grants. I served as a grant reviewer. So that's kind of interesting that I kind of started this whole thing by reviewing grants as opposed to
Right.
writing them. And so I really enjoyed just getting to know organizations and just really seeing the need. And so an opportunity came in about 2012 or so, very low pay to free opportunity, but I wanted to kind of take a pivot and focus on service. And so 2012, I actually started writing grants after being a grant reviewer and saw some success. And so, with that, my current specialty is mostly on small to mid-sized foundation grants. I have submitted grant applications for large federal grants, very few, but I have had some success there. But basically, majority of my grants that I have seen success with new nonprofits, smaller nonprofits, as well as your kind of larger ones, is seeing the smaller mid-size, so that might be anywhere from 1,000 to in the hundred thousands
Mhm.
for those types of grant applications. And I started Marshall and Marshall nonprofit consultant in 2014 and really decided to go full time. Like I left a full-time paid job with benefits, which sounds crazy, but I stepped out on faith and I saw the need. People were coming to me asking, hey, you know anything about this grant? Can you help me here? And so 2016, we decided to fully let one of us pursue this full time while the other is still working, but he does help. And since 2016, just as a grant writer, with a sole grant writer, we've seen success with nearly $1 million awarded. And
Wonderful.
so I like to, and I think the number is more like 968,700. It's something like that. But this year we will definitely meet the $1 million mark. And I'm excited about that because,
Great.
you know, grants are one of those things that everybody wants a grant and the opportunities are there, but it is so competitive.
Yeah.
So I really like to kind of point this number out because it does show not just for me, but for the organizations that I work with, they have seen success in receiving these funds and becoming sustainable as a nonprofit.
Right.
So that's just a little about me.
Great.
Go ahead.
I said, no, great accomplishment.
Thank you. Thank you. So definitely looking forward to, what's to come as we continue to work with more nonprofits. We're getting a lot of actually small businesses coming to us as well, because we are in the times of COVID and there are a lot of opportunities for small businesses as well. But today's focus, of course, is on the nonprofit arena. So that's what I kind of focus on today. So next slide. Okay, so I also teach. So I have this really, I don't know if it's a good habit, bad habit, but I like to do objectives. Anytime I am showing someone how to do something or I'm teaching something, I always like to have some objectives to walk away from. So we'll call them nuggets for today, appropriate nuggets at noon. So today we'll have three. The first one, we will focus on understanding the current grant making and funding trends. The second one will be to identify 3 types of funding for nonprofits. And then the third nugget, we will assess your readiness for grant opportunities as a nonprofit. All right, next slide. Okay, so nugget 1 is going to be trends. And so when we talk about trends and grants, and I guess I'll take a step back just so that we're all on the same page. So when we talk about grants are essentially free money. Like, it's money, no interest, nothing you have to pay back. You just apply. If you're awarded, as long as you meet the objectives that you said you were going to meet, then that is money that you don't have to pay back. So there's, it makes sense for people to say, hey, how can I get a grant? That's like the number one question I get from individuals, businesses, and nonprofits. And so when we talk about trends, we're talking about what did giving look like? So what do funders typically contribute their dollars to? Who are they giving to? And so I have 2 charts, infographics that I made, just doing a little research. And I'm going to kind of take it back 5 years ago to kind of show the difference. So this first one actually is a trend from 2015. And this is specifically for Georgia. I do work with nonprofits outside of Georgia, but for today, we're going to focus on Georgia and maybe kind of say that these trends are similar in other states as well. But for 2015, there was $932 million in foundation giving in the state of Georgia to nonprofits. Of that $932 million, 35% went to education. So nonprofits focusing on after school programs, STEM programs, anything education related, 35% of that funding went there. 23% of that funding went to health initiatives. So anything focused on like small charity clinics, health fairs, health education, also organizations that kind of fill the gap with access to care. 23% of that funding went there. And then 22.5% went to human services. And so human services would be classified or would classify organizations that include meeting essential needs like homeless shelters. So you have your housing aspect, food pantries, organizations that focus on specialty groups like seniors or those with disabilities. Those would include human services. And again, that's 22.5%. So the bulk of all the funding went to these 3 categories, leaving about 20% to all others. And all others could include religious organizations, those with social justice, those with IT. There's different types of nonprofits, but these are the primary 3. And that was 2015. So moving forward, next slide. Okay, so this these statistics actually come from 2018. So of course we're currently in 2020. I wanted to get it as close as possible. So same thing. This is for the state of Georgia, and these are the trends for Georgia. So $1.1 billion. So we did have an increase of foundation giving to nonprofits. Of that 1.1 billion, 44% went to education, 33% went to health, and 17% went to human services. So here we see there was an increase in giving, number one. And then there was also an increase in the specialty areas for education and health. Now, some people might say, okay, well, why are grant makers and foundations focusing on these areas? And not to say that others aren't important, but we have to kind of think about where we are as a nation, as a state, and what are some of the needs that need to be met. And so when we think about education, we have gaps in education as far as having supplies and programs in the classroom. And so you do have nonprofits that are trying to fill some of those gaps. And that's where a lot of the grant makers are kind of focusing their attention. Also with health, in the state of Georgia, we know that we did not have the expansion of Medicaid. And so we have gaps in access to care. So we do have some nonprofits that are charitable and free clinics. And there are quite a few foundations that are looking to try to meet those needs. We have organizations that focus on vision care, dental, all those things that aren't quite covered by Medicaid, and then the fact that we don't have expansion. And then the human services aspect, it actually took a dip from 2015 to 2018, but still, we're still trying to meet the basic needs of individuals. When we talk about job loss and things of that nature, there are people needing additional services. So that kind of explains the trends there. Next slide. All right. So that was 2015 and 2018. 2020 has been a year for all years. I can't really just put it into words, but it's been an interesting year. And so quite naturally, you'll start to see a shift in funding as far as what the hot topics are. And of course, we're in the middle or experiencing technically two pandemics, one with COVID-19 and the second one with racial issues in the US. And so just over the past couple of months, as I've been working with nonprofits, and we typically go to our grants that we've applied to in the past, you click on their page and it's like, oh, we're not giving our regular funding this year, but we are focusing on COVID-19 relief and social justice funding. And so you'll see a lot of that, not just for nonprofits, but also for small businesses as well. So for those organizations that might give out food baskets during this time, or they're tutoring children during this time, then COVID-19 relief funding could be applicable for that. Also, we have an election coming up. Don't know if everybody might remember that, but we have an election coming up. So I do see a lot of small grassroots foundations really seeking to give funding to organizations that are promoting voter education, registration, and then also for teaching different things about legislation. So those are opportunities for social justice funding as well. All right, so that's the first nugget. Of course, that was all the trends. So we kind of know now, okay, these are the things that are being funded or have been funded traditionally in the state of Georgia. And again, this could really be applicable to most other states. The trends are about the same. So moving to the next nugget. All right, so there are numerous types of funding because I've seen little specialty grants, but I'm going to focus specifically on 3 areas. So we have our private or foundation grants,
Mhm.
corporate grants, and then government grants. So these are all unique and special in their own way. When we talk about foundation grants, so remember in the beginning I said that my specialty is mostly on small to mid-sized grants. So that really is focusing on the foundation grants. And so with the foundation grant, that kind of looks like a very small or local community foundation. So, like in Middle Georgia, I believe there is the Community Foundation of Central Georgia. If
Very
we look at, like, I think maybe every county or most counties, so I know Fulton County has one, Rockdale, um, Henry County, they all have local foundations. And so those typically are smaller grant applications. It doesn't take weeks to complete. Very simple, but they do require that you have the 501c3 and that you are serving in that particular area that you're applying for. So if I'm applying for a grant in Fulton County, the services have to benefit individuals in Fulton County.
right.
Um, Other foundation grants could be if there are family foundations, and those could be national, but they're family foundations. So they're still giving maybe smaller amounts, $10,000, $20,000, and they're focusing on a specific area. So if your nonprofit is focusing on um, individuals with disabilities, and this foundation is looking to provide funding, then it doesn't matter what state you're in. If it doesn't say it in the requirements, you can apply for that grant. But again, still, in the tens of thousands, maybe $100,000. The next one is corporate grants, which I don't have listed on this picture. I think I made this little infographic just to kind of compare foundation versus government. But for your corporate grants, those are your national grants. The very popular ones right now are the Walmart Foundation. I think Costco has one, Coca-Cola. So those are from your very large companies that have a giving focus and priority, but it's open nationally. So what I like to kind of advise or suggest to new and smaller nonprofits, maybe not start with the corporate grants because your pool is going to be larger for the number of applications that are being submitted. So I always try to go for foundation grants with new nonprofits until they kind of get some success with winning grants and they have like a really good foundation for receiving grant funding. Your corporate grants usually typically go to larger nonprofits or nonprofits that have a national scope. So that's just kind of a tidbit. So they're there, you see them all the time. We have Walmarts close to us, so it sounds like it makes a lot of sense. Why not apply for a Walmart grant? But they receive thousands of applications and only give out grants to maybe 100 or less. So the next one is government grants, which yeah, they can be a headache. And I say that because these are great opportunities when you're fully established, you have everything together, as far as documentation, you're in the system for awards management, you have your DUNS number, all of these things that you have, but you're putting in hours, weeks, maybe months to complete the applications. And then there's a lot of paperwork attached to when you're awarded these grants. So they're typically more the 6-figure and up award amounts. And not just nonprofits can apply. You do see opportunities for small businesses, charitable organizations, depending on the focus. So a government grant might be one for HUD. If you're looking at community development for housing or shelter, then HUD has grants for those types of projects. Or if you're focusing on mental health, then there's SAMHSA, and they have specific grants that focus on mental health. For it could be a school that's doing a project, a nonprofit or church, but all of these types of organizations will qualify. But again, they are very time consuming. It could take months before you receive follow-up. And then there are multiple reports that are attached. So if you know the capacity of your nonprofit, so let's say you have a nonprofit and your staff only includes 4 people and you're doing the operations side, but you're also doing the service side, then you really got to think about the capacity to not only write the grants, but also track the numbers needed for the government grants and submit these reports. So that's not to discourage, but that's just to kind of say there's a lot of work that goes into it and that's required even after you receive the funding. So yeah, so that's those are the types. And then now the third nugget. So I know I just kind of spit out a lot of information, and definitely there'll be opportunities for questions in a minute here, but this third nugget is your grant readiness. So we just discussed the trends. So knowing where the money is going, what types of organizations are being funded. We looked at the types. So we do know we have the private foundation, we have the corporate and the government grants, all available, all these opportunities, all this money out here. So the next thing is your organization ready to apply for these types of grants? And so again, I have people contact me because when we hear, oh, there's an opportunity, there's money out here, let me see what we can get. And then I'll have people come to me and they don't have a budget. They don't have, some of them don't even have their 501c3, and that's fine. But most of these grants will require that. So to avoid wasting their time, I always ask, okay, well, let's do a little assessment. Let's see where you are before we take the time to invest in actually completing this whole process or trying to complete the process. So there's 4 areas that I like to look at. And so the first one is, do you have all the information for your organization's background? So that sounds like an easy yes, and for most people it is, but that does include making sure that you have a clear and concise mission and vision statement. And that simply means that in your mission statement that you can easily tell what it is that your organization does and who you're serving and the need that you're filling. You will be surprised as to how many people have nonprofits and they're not really clear on their mission. A grant funder will see that and toss your application to the side, because if you can't really state your mission and what you do, and basically a mission statement is kind of like your elevator pitch. So if you don't have that to bring in that funder, then they won't look at the rest of your application. So that's one thing. Do you have a clear and concise mission and vision statement? Also, with your organization background, do you have all the information available to say how you actually started, the purpose of you starting? So, a lot of nonprofits will have websites, and I'm looking and I don't know when they started. I don't know why they started. And so the same thing, if you can't really share that or show that information, it's hard for anyone to, number one, write a grant if you can't really share the purpose. And then also the funder is wondering the same thing. It's like, okay, I'm not really sure why they started. So that's the first thing. Do you have everything you need for your organization's background? The second thing, do you have all of your documents for taxes and financial information? So as I mentioned, my husband, he's the brains behind tax and financial information, but I do deal with as far as pulling the information together, making sure that nonprofits have it. I am the point person for that. He'll kind of look over, but I have seen situations where nonprofits don't have a budget.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not sure how we really would function without having one, but a lot of nonprofits will kind of just say, okay, well, we spent this much money, because some of them are self-funded, but they don't really have a clear budget as to, okay, these are my total expenses and this is how much revenue we're receiving, and then this is how much we're anticipating. So really spelling that out in a budget. It doesn't have to be fancy, but you do need to have a budget that shows revenue and expense. And that's for operations as well as special projects. So there's two types of budgets there. So do you have that information? Do you have a 990 completed? And so that is basically the same way as individuals we file for taxes. Your nonprofit has to do the same. So do you have that information available? Do you have your 501c3 letter? All of that information. So that is the tax and financial information. For governance, do you have a board of directors? Now, I've seen situations, and I'm just sharing all these tips because these are some things that I've seen, and it will hold you hold you back if you don't have it. Board of directors. This is something that a lot of nonprofits try to slide over or skip. You do have to send that information in when you are filing as a federal nonprofit, but you can literally just place or state the chairperson and a treasurer. But you really need to have a board that consists of at least 4 positions. Um, your chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer, and they don't need to be the same person. So I've seen those instances, and you need to have their information available. So making sure you have a board that's already been established, you have their contact information, and they were actually completing the duties in their officer roles. And then the fourth thing, your program and service information, that should be easy, but making sure that you have any service information that you've done in the past. So your outcomes, your data, demographics of who you're serving, how many people have you served, what were the outcomes, what impact did this program or project make? So that's a mouthful, but again, these are things that are 99% of the time required in your grant application. So making sure that you have everything you need under these 4 categories is key before you can say, I think I want to go ahead and apply for a grant. So next slide. Now, if you were sitting here and you're like, okay, I think we're good. We check off the boxes on most of all these, maybe need to clean up our budget, then that's great. You're ready to seek those opportunities that are available and submit your grant applications. So that's wonderful. However, if you're on the other side of this, and as I'm saying different things, and you're like, I don't even know what that is, I don't have one, I need to get a board together, our mission statement needs some work, then you're in luck. This is my soft plug here. So actually, in addition to writing grants, Marsha and Marshall Nonprofit Consulting has just launched the pilot series for our virtual course, which is called Ready, Set, Grants. And so essentially, this course will take you step by step through all 4 of those points that I mentioned and showing you how to make sure you have those documents ready. And so it's, again, a virtual course. There's 4 modules based on those points that I made in the previous slide. And it includes face-to-face, so Zoom calls, of course, but face-to-face sessions with myself where we're actually going through each of those modules. We are completing the documentation, we're brainstorming. I'm really pulling information from the organizations about what it is that they're doing. And so I actually had a class yesterday, and we're wrapping up the pilot session shortly. And so I was just getting some feedback, and one of the guys was like, you know what, this is a lot of work, but it's fulfilling work, because at first we were just out here doing the service, and we didn't think about all these things that we needed to have together. We know we're doing the work in the community, but we needed to put that to paper. We needed to document that. So he's been going through the process with their organization, pulling everything together, and they're doing tremendous work. But to be able to document that and have it available is what is going to translate on paper for the grant funding. And so that's basically what this course is for, making sure that you have that information, and that you're ready to apply. And so, as I said, we're currently wrapping up, or getting ready to wrap up, the pilot session. So registration for our next session for the Ready, Set, Grants course will begin in September, which is actually next week. And so definitely kind of be on the lookout for more information on how to register. I will be probably adding that information to all of our social media platforms within the next week. Okay, next slide. All right. And so that's it. So if you have any questions, or you're interested in the course, or just any questions about grants in general, you can contact us at Marsha & Marsha Nonprofit Consulting through our website, as well as you can contact me via email, and that's marsha@m&mmpc.com. We're also on Twitter and Facebook at Marshall and Marshall Nonprofit Consulting. So with that being said, that is my presentation, and I'm willing and open to take questions.
Yes, and let me say, first of all, that was great information. So thank you so very much for that information. And please share that how people can register with for the virtual learning, because I want to make sure on my social media, on my pages, that I'm sharing that information as well. Because
Absolutely.
you touched bases on something that's so key. A lot of people want to start a nonprofit organization. They want to save the world, so to speak, which is great, because every nonprofit was created so that it can address a need. But what happens is people don't understand everything that's involved in creating that nonprofit, and what it takes to actually apply for the grant. A lot of people think when you're applying for a grant, you just go and pull something out and you fill out this form. Yeah. But from the small grants to the more comprehensive grants, it takes a lot of work, and you have to have that structure in place. So I think this is very much needed, and it will just really help put nonprofit organizations in a really good standing for their sustainability too, because all of them have to have sustainability. So let's open it up for any questions that anybody has for Marsha. So no one has any questions or anything. Again, Marsha, I want to say thank you so much for the information. This is going to be shared on the YouTube page and the website for us. And I was sharing with you a little bit earlier, I'm looking forward to putting together a fall conference that is a comprehensive conference for the nonprofit organization. So I'm definitely going to look forward to inviting you to join and help share and empower more nonprofits in the area of grant writing and funding opportunities. And like you said, readiness, because a lot of people know they need money, but just are not in that space yet to apply for the grant.
Absolutely. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to that opportunity to share during the conference. And again, thank you for providing the opportunity for me to just share just some things that I've just seen over the past couple of years. Like I said, I've been doing this since about 2009. And so I've seen quite a bit. And, you know, with Marsha and Marsha, we really just want people to be educated, and not just kind of just guessing and taking a stab at it. So that's really our purpose, to make sure that nonprofits are educated and that they are being educated so that they can be sustainable. So I definitely appreciate this opportunity to share just a few nuggets, as we call it.
Yes, and I see that Sandra has joined the call. I want to say thank you so much. We are in the process of wrapping up, Sandra, but this segment has been recorded, and we're going to make it available for viewing for, you know, people who aren't able to be here. We had some great nuggets, and again, we thank Marsha for providing that information. Again, please visit her website, connect with her on our social media pages, and that way you can stay informed and you can stay connected. And I encourage you to share the information about the modules that are coming up so people can be ready, they can
Absolutely.
get set, and they can get ready to write those grants and become sustainable so they can then impact and change the community how they want to through their mission statement. And thank you again for everybody who attended. Any final words, Marsha?
No final words, just again, my contact information is here. Definitely make sure you're following us on Twitter and Facebook. It's Marsha and Marshall Nonprofit Consulting. And so that is where you will see updates for the upcoming Ready, Set, Grants course that should be coming out within the next week or so. So stay tuned. But again, thank you for all of those who joined also.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for sharing this lunchtime with us. And until next time, have a great Thursday afternoon. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.